Welcome to Season 4 of the Get Out of Teaching podcast presented by Larksong Enterprises. This podcast is for teachers who are considering leaving education but feel like they have no options. I'm your host, Elizabeth Diakos. I'm a career transition coach who guides overwhelmed teachers through a 5-step process out of education and into a life they love. I'd like to see a world where the work of teachers is valued and respected, and that teachers have a career pathway that enables them to continue to offer value to society beyond their work in the classroom. So in this season, we'll be speaking to other experts who help people to change careers, as well as a few ex-teachers who've forged a pathway into something new. So come along for the ride as we get out of teaching. Hi everyone. I just wanted to give you a heads up about this episode. We did have some technical glitches, and so even though I think it's a really valuable conversation, there might be just a few times in it where there's a bit of a lag and we're talking over each other a couple of times. So I just wanted to give you a heads up about that. But this is episode 12. Hi everyone and welcome to the show, and on today's show I'm very pleased to be interviewing Kirsten Brumby, who is a career coach of over 16 years and author of Now What?, which is a step-by-step approach to land your new job or career. So go Kirsten, thank you so much, and thank you for sending me a copy of your book. I've had a quick look at it and
welcome.
There's so much
Thanks for having me on the show.
That's great. So Kirsten, give us a little picture of how you got to the point that you're at right now, because you weren't a teacher, but a lot of the listeners are teachers and they're in the process of looking for a new job or trying to create a new career pathway for themselves.
I actually had a career in IT for about 10 years and got to kind of the end of that career and decided to leave the particular role that I was in. And I was also 3 months pregnant at the time. And I thought, oh, that's okay. Look, I'll just leave and then I'll get a 3-month, I'll just leave and I'll get a 3-month contract before the baby's born, and that'll all be good. And then I'll have the baby and then I'll come back and I'll get a proper job. So that was all a great plan until, of course, I applied for 55 jobs and didn't even get one interview, to the point that then by the time I got to the 55th job application, I finally got a job interview and then went, well, this isn't really going to suit because I'm now 7.5 months pregnant and they want me for a 6-month contract, so that's probably not going to work.
Right.
So I just went, oh, what's happened here? And so I just stopped looking for work, and then I obviously had the baby, and then I had some reflection time because I had a little baby and I didn't have a job, and did some reflection about what exactly was going on. I was I'd ran a business, a consulting business for over 7 years, really successfully, but I couldn't even get base level jobs. So what's happening here? And so after that reflection, I kind of went, oh, well, it's probably not just that I'm not good at those jobs. I know I am, but actually I'm not good at writing job applications and telling people what they need to know about me and my experience for what they would like in those roles. And so from there, I applied for the first job and that I wanted to get in a completely different field and got it. And then I just started helping friends and family with the same sorts of questions, well, I don't know what I want to do now. I don't actually know how to get this job. I'm applying for jobs, I can't get in, or I'm getting interviews and I can't get through. And so I kind of went through the school of hard knocks, if you like, and kind of just developed these, the skills and approaches and ways of looking at things a little bit differently in order to help people, which is where I started out. And then it just kind of fell in my lap, and I started career coaching, doing lots of that because I had these approaches that kind of worked.
Fantastic. And I had a quick look at your book yesterday because it only arrived yesterday, so I haven't had a chance to look through the whole thing yet, but I just stumbled across the chapter about when you go for the interview, because I think that's something that often people are quite afraid of. And you just make such a really valid point that the interviewer is often just as nervous as what you are as the interviewee, and they're under pressure to maybe fill a template or have a set of questions that they have to ask everyone, and so in order to create a level playing field, and so they're so anxious and nervous themselves that often they fail to establish rapport with you, and so I just found that really interesting to see it from the other side, the different perspectives. So that's a really helpful part of your book. So okay, let's move.
I think one of the key approaches of
go on. We've got a bit of a lag here, so just talk.
Oh no, one of my key approaches with everything is to use your empathy all the time, to be trying to think about the other person that's on the other end of the job application, or the other person that's on the other end of the interview, to actually just stand in their shoes for a couple of minutes and have a think about it. And you're absolutely right. Quite many recruiters, not recruitment agents, and obviously human resources people that actually do this for a living, but many other interviewers have never done interviews before, or they don't do them as their core work, or they don't actually know how to run a good interview or do a good job. So and not only that, but quite nervous. I certainly have given a couple of examples in the book where people come up against other people that this is their first interview that they've ever run. So to expect them to run a beautiful interview where they make you feel at home and they know exactly what are the right questions to ask is unrealistic to expect that.
Mm-hmm. And I know for myself, just applying for teaching jobs, I'd go in and they'd go, right, here's the list of questions. Go and sit in this room all by yourself. Here's a glass of water and a pencil. Do your thing. And I found that just so intimidating and so uncomfortable. My fight-flight response kicked in as soon as that happened. And then all I wanted to do was get out of there. The last thing I wanted to do was work at that place because I felt so uncomfortable. And yet they're probably just following a procedure in order to make it the same for everyone and not have any bias.
Yes.
So, but it's counterproductive in the end, isn't it?
That's right.
Okay, so
and also ironically, that is that quite often they'll let you have a look at the interview questions, so that makes you feel more relaxed in the interview, so you're prepared for it. But quite often, it exactly as you've just said, it happens in the opposite. It makes that person feel much worse and much more nervous.
Yeah. Okay, so I want you to imagine that we have a teacher who's in her early 50s, say she's 52. Her name's Donna. She's woken up one morning and gone, you know what, I think I'm done here. I don't want to be a teacher anymore. I've given it everything I've got, but now I'm looking for something new. And I've still potentially got another 15, 16 years of working life left ahead of me. What would be the best first steps that Donna could take in order to transition from education into something new?
Right. Well, I guess quite often that happens with not just teachers, but anybody that's looking to transition out of, a career or a job that they've been in for some time. And what I find is the biggest sticking point is that they don't actually know what it is that they don't have clarity. They don't know, well, if it's not teaching, then what is it? Where do I go from here? What do I do? I've got lots of skills, and teachers have amazing skills, not just in teaching and not just in working with children or with adolescents. Like, they have these hugely transferable skills. So they could actually go and work in any number of fields, in any number of industries. So when that pile is so wide and you go, what do I decide to do? And then how do I do that? Becomes kind of a sticking point. So the very first thing that I tell people to do is actually stop thinking about what it is that you want to do, and try to bring your unconscious mind to bear on the problem. So what often happens is that when we're consciously trying to think of what will I do next, what am I suited to, where will I go, putting all this pressure on ourselves to come up with an answer, you actually generate kind of internal resistance where you go, I'm not going to give you the answer. So we let our unconscious mind kind of come to bear. And the way that we do that, the way that I encourage people to do that, is by just thinking about focusing right here, right now. What is it that I like and I don't like about this current job, about this employer, about teaching, the industry? What do I love? What does a great day at work look like to me? What are my values? What motivates me at work? And quite often some people's motivations change. So at the start of their career, they might be motivated, for example, with a teacher to help kids and to teach kids, to help them to learn. But motivations can actually change across our career. And so all of a sudden you might wake up and go, I'm actually not so motivated by that anymore. So what is a clear idea of what your motivation is now? Focus on those things and then just let them settle. And then what happens is when we can do that and trust the process, then our unconscious mind can kind of join the dots for us and then come up with some sort of, aha moment, or at least a really significant insight about where we might go.
Wow. And can I just say, when you're talking about that, I can just see how much that lights you up. Like you're excited to help people get to that point.
Yeah.
That's really
absolutely
energizing for you. I can see that. So, okay.
Yeah.
So we've tapped into our unconscious mind and we've begun to realize there are aspects of the job that we do like. So for instance, for me, I was an art teacher. I love the creative side of it. I was talking to a client the other day and she said she's a music teacher, and she said she often gets the creative jobs at school where she has to make something or like make a prop for a concert, that kind of stuff. And that was me. I was always the one. I always had a hammer and a spanner and a screwdriver and a drill just in case anyone needed something fixed. I would go and do it.
Yeah.
And I love that aspect of the job. But what I found that it did was it actually took me away from the bits of the job that I had to do, which was, the report writing and the boring stuff. And so then I felt under pressure all the time because I was spending too much time doing the things that I love doing and not enough time devoted to the actual core elements of the job. And so that would get me into trouble. And so that was one of the reasons I didn't want to be a teacher anymore, because I was always in trouble for having too much fun. But but I guess it's good to just realize that can be an issue, that there might be an element of your job that you love, but it's actually not what they want you there for, even though that's something that you do. So how do you translate, or how do you kind of move from recognizing there are bits of my job that I have to do and there are bits of my job that I love to do, and then how do you find the sweet spot where you can create something new for yourself that's mainly with the stuff that you love to do? That's the tricky part, I think.
That's absolutely the tricky part. And that's why that's exactly what I'm talking about. When we try to apply our logical brain to that, quite often it doesn't work. So we go, okay, what are the bits that in my job that I love, for example? And then, okay, so that means that, so it's kind of like the simple example that I often use is like, saying that I can fix cars. So I know about cars. I don't. This is just an example. My dad's a mechanic. I know nothing about cars. I know about cars. I can fix them. I actually I can do that. That means that I should be a mechanic. So that's your logical brain going, these are the things that you like doing, you can do, then I can be a mechanic. Sometimes that works, and that works really well. The people that I talk to, that's not working. They're not getting that answer that says you should be a mechanic. So the way that the unconscious mind works is just going, right, well, let's not think about what you want to do. Let's think about me right now. When do I feel like I'm in the flow? On Saturdays when I go out and I start fiddling with that engine of the chainsaw, and I just love taking an engine apart, and then I like putting it together. And I actually really like being outside while I'm doing that in the sun, with my back in the sun. It's really nice. And I get in a bit of the flow. And then when you kind of just register those things, and I call it having your antenna up. So you have your antenna up for those sorts of things, and you let them settle, and then all of a sudden your unconscious mind will actually join those dots and go, oh, why don't you be a car mechanic? And it's a very different process than actually trying to get know exactly what it is that you're good at or that you like doing, and then applying that to something else. Does that make sense?
Yeah, absolutely it does. You've taken me down a whole rabbit hole in my mind as you're talking. I'm like, what do I always put on my resume? Drawing, reading, gardening, swimming. So if I could be, my ideal, place would be somewhere by the sea, somewhere where I could use that creative outlet and maybe have a beautiful garden. And if I could create that for myself, even if my work is different, if I've got somewhere to retreat to that makes that doable, makes it okay to go and maybe spend part of my day doing stuff I don't love. But I can also, I planted garden outside the art room. Like, I did bring that to that job. But I guess the thing is, how do you identify? And I talk to so many teachers who say, I love to write, I love to read. But there aren't many jobs where that is the job, So a lot of teachers are in that kind of literary realm, that they're into that sort of work.
Yes.
And so I think then they get afraid, like, oh, well, who is going to pay me to read, or who's going to pay me to write, stories? And so they get anxious and about that. Yep. But there must be a way forward, because, people do it, don't they? They do get out. So what would you say to someone who's maybe they've got those kind of, they're good with people, they're good with communication, they like to read, they like to write. What are the kinds of roles they might be able to find, and how do they get into that flow state where they recognize it?
So letting your unconscious mind is one thing to its mind. The second thing is exploring and trying to figure out and building. So with your what I was just talking about now with your unconscious mind, that's about building your awareness about you and about the things that you like, that you're good at, not good at, that you don't like. But there is also another piece about building, I call it building job awareness. So it's about building
So we were talking about the second piece, the job awareness.
So building your awareness about yourself is the first step, and that is, what you like, what you don't like, what you're good at, what you're not good at, values, all of these different ways of looking at yourself to actually figure out what it is, or let your unconscious mind kind of join those dots and figure out what you might want to do next. There's also an element of what I call job awareness building. So you have to sometimes build awareness of what jobs are out there, or what are potential or possible careers. But it's really important to do that first step first about building your awareness around yourself, because then when you go and do your job awareness building, then that helps to kind of folds really nicely into it. So activities that I might get people to do in terms of job awareness is there's an exercise in the book. It's called the JAB exercise, job awareness building, and it's very simple. It's just go on to some job search sites and just read about all different kinds of jobs, and it doesn't matter what it is. It doesn't matter if you've got it can be like a brain scientist or a rocket scientist. It doesn't have to be something that you're suited to or that you have the qualifications for. In fact, the more different, the better. And just to read the position descriptions, read the job ads, and take note of anything that your antenna, because you're going to have your antenna up again, what flags with your antenna. And like examples of that might be things like, you'll see a job for a winery manager and go, that'd be fantastic. I'd love to work in the Hunter Valley, and I'd love to work in the beautiful sunshine all day, and I don't want to work in the office. So it gives you kind of insights. But it also can help to open up, again, because you've got your unconscious tuned in now, it can help to open up different ideas for you. And also volunteering is another huge thing. So if you find a sector that you're interested in, or a particular job that you don't know exactly what it is that you want to do or what's available out there, then we'll look at finding volunteer opportunities. So if I can give you an example of someone that I've just finished working with, actually, she's just on her way now. She did her first, what I call the drop dead list, which is where you look at all your different elements about you and bring up your awareness. She was actually a graphic designer for over 10 years. And then she was going through her doing the job awareness building, and she was going through some jobs, just any old jobs, and then just went through and went, opened up a nutritionist job ad, read it, and went, that's exactly what I want to do. She had some health issues. She's had chronic health issues, and she didn't have a nutritionist, and it ended up being very tied to nutrition, her health issues. And so she went, that's what I want to do. So it's kind of, because she's opened her unconscious up to, the antennas up to go think about things differently, when she's come across this job that she knows about, and she's known about, everybody knows what nutritionists do, but because at this particular time in her life, as soon as she opened up she just, and so the next coaching session that we had, she rang and she goes, right, so I know what I'm doing. I'm going to be a nutritionist. I've already enrolled in uni. I start in 2 weeks.
Oh, wow.
and the rest was, the rest was history. And she's finished her first semester at uni, and it's been crazy. So, in a good way.
Yeah. And so you mentioned a drop dead list. Can you tell us a little bit more about that?
Yeah, so the drop dead list is just my little tool, and it's one of the tools that I use to help people build their awareness and think about jobs not jobs, think about themselves in relation to jobs through different angles. So I ask them, and it's like a 3-page list of questions, and it just asks them all different things. So, for example, it might ask, can you remember a time in your past when you were in the flow? It doesn't matter what you were doing. It could be knitting, could be, when you were a kid and you were playing with your dog in the backyard, and describe that. And it also asks some questions about, and this is where drop dead comes from, just things like, what are your practical things around jobs? So usually most people have a practical financial amount. For example, look, I have to bring $50,000 into the household, but I would really like to bring 90,000. That would be what I like. So, so we look at what, and some people don't drive, for example. So a drop dead item for them would be that their job has to be within public transport. So there are some things that are what I call drop dead. So once you get past the clarity stage and you get to then start to apply for jobs, there's going to be some things that when you read a job description or you start to have discussions with the recruiters, that job may drop dead for you. So, if you need to bring $50,000 into the household, that, but then, a job is advertised for only $40,000, that you're not going to waste your time. And also there's and I think I might have talked to you about this before the podcast, and this is one of those areas of magic of job searching, because there's some sort of, and after all these years, I don't know what it is, whether it's like a law of attraction kind of thing. But once people start to articulate what it is that they want and need and would like in a job, the amount of times that I've seen that, pretty much somebody's waved a magic wand and, that job has just materialized exactly what they want, I've lost count. But I still find, that's part of the magic for me, because I just stand back every time and go, wow, that's so crazy. Look at that. They want that. They didn't think they could have it, and then they found it.
Yeah, wow. That's awesome. And I think there is something, like you say, about that idea of actually I hesitate to say putting it out into the universe, but even though I kind of half don't believe it, I've also seen it work even for me. Like when I've said, these are the kind of clients I'm looking for, mid to late career teachers who are thinking about leaving. They think they've got no options. They really want to do something soon. And then all of a sudden I get all these connections on LinkedIn, and I'm like, oh, that was weird and cool all at once. So I think you're right. And I guess the other thing is that you just made me think of is that idea of, you said that it can magically appear, but often it appears via our connections, the other people in our network.
Correct,
or
absolutely.
The next layer out who are able to show us opportunities. So what's your experience of that kind of thing?
Yeah, absolutely. It's kind of, it's, I talk to people about one of the things that, one of the practical things of getting a job is I talk to people I think it's probably the first thing in the book. It's certainly right up the top there, that when you finally have clarity and you know what it is that you want and you want to get a job either in a sector or a particular organisation, I just tell people, go and tell everybody in your network tell all your connections, because connection is a really special thing, and connection through the whole job searching process is a huge thing. So, for example, I know I'm getting a bit excited, but let me go back to, I talk about whenever you go for a job and you want to put in a written application and there's a contact person, I always say that's one of my rules. You need to ring that contact person and start that relationship, because those connections are just crazy. The amount of times I've had something really weird happening. So, the person makes a really good establishes a really good relationship with that person as a contact person. Then they decide together that they're probably not the right fit for that job, so they don't put in a written application. And then 2 months later, get a phone call saying, just was thinking of you and I'd really like you to put this job application in, and then they get that job. So the power of connection absolutely cannot be underestimated. And talking to people about, anybody that will listen, basically, they don't even have to listen, so even your kids, talking to people about what it is that you want, and what it is that you're looking for now, even if it's not really well formulated, like I want to be a nutritionist, but if she could have articulated that she wanted to work in disability rights and advocate for people that have the same sort of health issues as she has. Just the act of articulating that to people, and the connections that can help you, and being open then to those opportunities, because that's what it's about. That those opportunities are probably still there. It's just that we're now more open to see them. And when you talk to your networks and when you go out, whatever those networks are, then you've got all these other people that are actually also thinking on your behalf or thinking for you. And a very quick example of that was, went through a process with someone who was a court registrar, a clerk for nearly 20 years, and wanted to change, didn't know what she wanted to change to, went through the drop dead list and through a whole stack of stuff, went through kind of 3 months of thinking, what does she want to do? And brought her husband in, so talked to him about what she was doing and thinking, and the coaching that she was going through. And they were watching some program one night, and it was about babies, and he said to her, you love babies, they've got 4 kids, you love babies, you should be like a midwife or something. And she just went, you're absolutely right. So she studied to be a midwife. She's now been a midwife for 5 years. So those connections. Yeah, it absolutely, exactly. And so it's not just about, if you talk to people, then they'll be able to find you a job, but it's allowing people in and then having their input to go, oh, okay, well, maybe that's an idea, or that's a great idea, or that's just another piece of information.
I love that. And I think you're right too. If you enlist the help of your network, people love to do people favors. They love to feel like they can have kind of a bit of power or influence.
Exactly.
And so they're actually really motivated to help you if they can.
Yeah, absolutely.
Yeah. All right.
Yep.
So
absolutely. And I have vast experience in that. Yeah.
So let's go back to Donna. She's been doing her research. She's looked at all these different jobs. She's found something that resonates with her, and now she's got to write her job application. What advice would you give to her in that scenario?
Use empathy. That's my base. Go-to. You need to think about the person that's going to be reading your job application. They don't know you from a bar of soap. They don't know maybe even what a teacher does really, besides that they kind of go into the classroom and they teach kids, but they don't understand what that means and what that looks like and what those skills look like and what that experience looks like. So if you're transitioning to a new career or industry, then you have to translate that usually in writing, because usually you have to do a written job application before you get an interview, and you have to translate that in writing in both your resume and your cover letter, and if there's selection criteria or other things that you have to write, and sometimes you might have a targeted question or something that you have a specific question you have to answer, you have to actually explain that to the people that are reading, because they don't know you and they can't be expected to know that. Of course, teachers would have excellent oral communication skills. Of course they would, but they don't understand that, and they don't, from their frame of reference, they might not even have kids. So they might not have ever even had, except for when they were going through school, had any experience of teaching. So a really good example is, you can't just write when a job says you want excellent, verbal communication skills. You can't just say, yes, I was a teacher for 15 years and I've got excellent communication skills. It doesn't cut the mustard. You have to say, right, so as a teacher over 15 years, I've done presentations in front of students of aged from 5 to 12 years old. I've also run parent-teacher interviews with sometimes quite stressed and frustrated parents. I've also had to do presentations in front of staff of about 20 staff, and I also presented at this teachers' conference in front of 200 people. So that actually then gives that person, and they go, oh, okay, I can see that that's what she means by excellent written communication skills. Yeah. And then if that fits the job, then that's great. If it doesn't fit the job, if they actually wanted you to be able to do Zoom conferences to professional people, then you're not going to be a good fit for that job. So it's probably good that you do get culled at that stage, because it's not going to be you. But then they can see, absolutely, great. She's done presentations. She's done. If she can sit down in front of irate parents for half an hour and talk about why their kid is not doing so well in maths, then I reckon she can probably have a team meeting. So does that make sense? So it's kind of translating that into what that job requires, and then telling your experience and being really explicit about it. And, even though you think, well, everybody should know this, they don't. And when they're comparing job applications, if they've got someone that, is from their industry that they know, that they can recognise straight away, of course they're not going to spend the time to try and figure out, well, okay, what do you think a teacher's verbal communication skills might be, and would they be equivalent to this? They haven't got the time. Recruiters haven't got the time to do that, or energy usually.
Yeah, that's really great advice. So you're basically saying you have to make it so explicit that they can't possibly misunderstand what you're capable of. Nice one. And actually, just on that, the teacher can now do Zoom conferencing as well. So, because remote learning has made all teachers experts in that.
Yeah, no, sorry. I know that's not a good example.
No, but I think 2 years ago it would have been a good example.
I know.
But now it's, we're all experts.
No, that's right. Completely. Okay. I know, exactly.
So, okay, say we've written a great application, great cover letter, and we get to the interview stage.
Yep.
What advice would you give to Donna? She's got to get dressed for this interview. She's nervous. She hasn't had an interview for 25 years, maybe.
No. Okay. So, Donna, first things first is, again, it's empathy all the time. Just stop and think for a minute about the other person and about the other organisation. So, for example, when you're getting dressed, you'll think about that other organisation, about are they a corporate organisation? Are they very casual, say, youth work organisation? So you'll want to dress accordingly. So you're not going to want to go into a youth work position role in a high-flying corporate, $500 suit. Because it doesn't match them. So they're not going to see you past that suit. And also for the same reason, if you're going for a high-flying corporate job, to walk in a pair of jeans and a sloppy Joe is probably not going to cut the mustard. So you need to think about just think very quickly about that other person and about the organisation. Do a bit of research, reread your position description about what it is, because again, those first impressions, they're going to have to go, right, well, this is a youth worker position and she's just walked in with a $500 suit. Is she going to be really suited for this? I don't know. So you've already set a first impression that may not be the greatest one for that position. Now, that aside, the only other thing that I talk to people about, and I would talk to Donna about the same, is that job interviews on the whole, yes, you can do technical job interviews where you might have to do some technical skills or do some practical, questions or something like that. But on the whole, in general, job interviews are really about somebody meeting someone else and going, are you a good fit for us? Can I see myself working with you, sorry? Do I see you fitting into the organisation? Do I feel like I'm going to like working with you? So if that's the case, then Donna's got a whole stack of control over that. So Donna's job in an interview is very simple, and that is just to be herself. And I could talk about being your authentic self. So, and by what I mean by that is the real you that they are actually going to work with in a day-to-day situation. So they need to see who it is that they're going to be working with. And then if that's the right fit for the organisation for them, then you're going to get the job. If that's not the right fit, then it's probably, again, a good thing that you don't win that job, because you won't be happy and they won't be happy. So it's all about, either working out, so for a really simple example is, if you in the workplace, if somebody asked you a hard question that you didn't know the answer to, would you fall apart and feel like a complete idiot and not know how to answer it and everything like that, which is what happens in interviews? Probably not. Probably you'd say, oh, that's a really good question and I don't know what the answer to that is. I need to find it out, or I need time to think about it, or actually can I talk that through with you, or can you ask that question in a different way? So so when you get stuck, and lots of people get stuck in interviews answering a particular curly question, or, they start talking about something and then halfway through go, oh, I've forgotten what the question was, and I don't even know where I was. So the more that you can be the person that they're going to be in an interview, the better that interview is going to go for you. You may still not get the job because we don't have any control. Donna has no control over what particular things they're going to weight and what particular things they're going to want to see in those people. And she has no control over the other 10 applicants that have come in for an interview that have much more experience, or have, if you start comparing against other people, then maybe you're not the right person for the job. So all you have control over, Donna, is sitting in that room or standing in that room and being who you are when they're going to work with you. So if you get stuck on a question and you say to them, well, that's a really good question, I'm not sure of the answer, can I try and talk it out, because that's how I would do it in the workplace, then they get to see a different side of you. They get to see, okay, when she gets stuck under pressure, she doesn't fall apart, she doesn't completely clam up, she just says, I need to talk it through. So if that fits for them and works for them, then that's great, and then they're going to pick you.
Fantastic. I love that. It's such simple wisdom, and yet so effective, isn't it? Just to be your authentic self.
That's actually a really hard thing to do.
Yeah. It is when you're nervous too, I think. You don't, you think you're trying to be something that you're not. Yeah. Okay, so as we wrap this up, I've got one last question for you. It's got nothing to do with job seeking or anything like that. I just wanted to ask you, what's your favourite song?
Oh, what's my favourite song for job seeking?
No, just for you.
I'll tell. Oh, for me, right. Well, I'll tell you actually that the one that's just popped into my head, which was when I left. This was a long time ago, so it's an old song. I started my career in the Commonwealth Bank, so a large bank, and I kind of felt really stymied there. That they put a hold on promotions and pay rises and all that sort of stuff because of reasons outside of my control. And no matter how well I performed, I couldn't get a promotion and I couldn't get a pay rise. So I wasn't very happy with that as a 24-year-old computer science graduate from uni, thinking I was really great. And on the day that I left, I packed up all my stuff and I put it in the car and off I drove. And on the radio comes, do you remember that song? Ain't nothing going to break my stride. Nobody's going to slow me down. I can't believe I've just sung on your podcast. But that song, so it's kind of stuck with me through the years. So ain't nothing going to break in my stride. So I'm going to be in charge of my career from this point on, and nobody's going to control that. And that's certainly how I run the job seeking and searching, that the person needs to be in control of that. You can be in control of getting clarity. You can be in control of matching as well as you can what your experience and skills are to that job on a written application. And you can also, like we just were discussing, you can be in control of showing the real you in an interview.
That is fantastic. And thank you so much for singing it. I love that. Kirsten Brumby, thank you so much for coming on the Get Out of Teaching podcast today. It's been an absolute pleasure.
Thank you, Elizabeth.
I hope you're enjoying the Get Out of Teaching podcast presented by Larksong Enterprises with your host, Elizabeth Diakos. Before you go, I just wanted to let you know about a couple of cool things I've been working on. The Get Out of Teaching Readiness Scorecard is a free quiz that helps you see how ready you are to leave teaching. I'm also running a webinar for teachers who are thinking of starting a business. That's on Wednesday, September the 29th at 11:30 a.m. AEST, that's Melbourne time. You can do the scorecard, book for the webinar, and find the show notes for this episode at www.larksong.com.au.